All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a really powerful tool that the world's top investors use to handle all the uncertainty out there. It's called a Monte Carlo simulation, and really, it's all about answering one of the biggest questions for your financial future. What are the actual odds I'll reach my goals, and maybe more importantly, can my portfolio survive the journey to get there?
So, let's just get right to the heart of it. We are all taught to look at the average return of our investments, right? But here's the thing. What if I told you that single number is probably one of the most misleading metrics in all of finance, especially when the market gets rocky?
To really get it, we first have to break down the fundamental, and I mean fundamental, flaw in relying on simple averages.
Think about it for a second. A 12% average return sounds pretty good, but it tells you nothing about the ride. It can mean nice, smooth, steady growth. Or it can mean a white-knuckle roller coaster with a 50% gain one year and a 30% crash the next. The final number might look the same, but the journey, and let's be honest, the stress on you as an investor is completely different. That average just hides all the risk.
And this slide just lays out the problem perfectly. The traditional view, over on the left, it assumes this tidy, predictable little world where everything fits into a nice bell curve. But the reality, on the right, is that markets are messy. They have what we call fat tails, which is just a fancy way of saying that crazy, extreme events, both good and bad, happen way more often than you'd think. And this is crucial. The order of your returns matters immensely. A huge loss right after you retire can be absolutely devastating. That same loss 20 years later, maybe not such a big deal. A simple average completely ignores all of that.
So, if averages are so broken, what are the pros doing? Well, they use a secret weapon, really. A tool that moves way beyond a single number and instead embraces the entire range of what's possible. And just how powerful is it? Get this. Renaissance Technologies, which is arguably the most successful quant hedge fund in history, runs over 100,000 of these simulations every single day. This is not some academic theory, it's a core, battle-tested part of how they manage billions of dollars. And this is the absolute key. They aren't trying to predict the future. They're not using a crystal ball. What they're doing is mapping out all the possible futures to understand the risks of any decision they make. It's about turning that big, scary unknown of the market into a set of probabilities you can actually measure and plan for. And you can see just how this plays out in the real world right here. This is fascinating. Back in late 2019, before anyone was really talking about a pandemic, these simulations were run. Look at the 100% stock portfolio. The model said there was about an 18.5% chance of a 30% or greater crash. A few months later, March 2020, bam, it fell 34%. The simulation basically saw that a crash of that magnitude was a very real possibility.
And that right there is the real game changer. When the crash actually happened, the investors who had run these simulations weren't completely blindsided. They were prepared for it. They knew a huge drop was in the range of possibilities, so they held their nerve, they didn't panic sell, and they were in a much, much better position when the market started to recover.
Okay, so you've seen what it can do. Now let's pop the hood and see how this amazing technology actually works. At its heart, a Monte Carlo simulation is basically a super-powered what-if machine. Instead of giving you one single answer for the future, it runs thousands upon thousands of different hypothetical scenarios to show you the entire landscape of what could happen to your portfolio, from the absolute best-case scenario to the absolute worst. The process is actually pretty logical when you break it down. First, it analyzes the financial DNA of your investments, their past returns, their risk, how they tend to move together. Step 2, it uses all that data to generate thousands of unique paths the future market could take, including everything you can imagine. Crashes, huge bull runs, inflation spikes, you name it. Then, it calculates how your specific portfolio would have done on every single one of those paths. And finally, and this is the magic part, it maps all those results so you get a crystal clear picture of the probabilities.
And we're not just talking about a handful of scenarios here. A really robust simulation for a personal financial plan will test it against over 10,000 unique potential futures. Think about that. It is the ultimate stress test for your money.
So the simulation spits out all this data, thousands of results. What on earth are you supposed to do with it? Let's talk about how you actually interpret this stuff to make smarter decisions.
I absolutely love this analogy because it just makes so much sense. You would never get on a plane if you knew the engineers only tested it for perfect sunny days, right? Of course not.
You want to know it can handle a nasty storm, severe turbulence, maybe even an engine failure. So why would we treat our life savings with any less rigor?
The results usually get organized into what are called percentiles. So the 50th percentile, that's your middle of the road, most likely outcome. It's kind of the new average. But where it gets really, really valuable is when you look at the edges. The 90th percentile, that shows you your potential home runs. But the 10th percentile, that's your gut check moment. That shows you what could happen in a really bad downturn. It lets you ask the critical question, am I okay if this worst-case scenario happens? Can I live with that?
And ultimately, it all boils down to something like this. The simulation can give you an actual number, a probability of success for hitting your financial goal, like a comfortable retirement. It transforms a vague hope into a concrete number. In this example, there's a 75% chance of success. Now you have real information. Now you can decide if those are odds you're willing to bet your future on.
And that really brings us to the most important part of all this. It's about a huge mindset shift that this kind of tool enables.
Let's be super clear about this. This is not a crystal ball. No one can predict the future. The entire goal here is to stop trying to predict and start preparing. By understanding the full range of what's possible, you can build a portfolio that's tough, that's resilient enough to handle whatever the world decides to throw at it. And this really is the bottom line, isn't it? Just crossing your fingers and hoping for the best, that is not a financial plan. But understanding the mathematical probabilities behind your decisions and building a plan around them, that is a strategy. So I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. Do you actually know the odds of your financial plan succeeding? And maybe more importantly, are you truly prepared for its worst-case scenario? Because answering that question is really the first step toward building a much more resilient financial future. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.